Right now, in the frozen food aisle of a high-end grocery store in Johannesburg, a man is checking the price of organic mushrooms. He's wearing designer sunglasses, a fresh tracksuit, and a diamond watch. He looks like any other wealthy businessman enjoying a lazy Sunday afternoon with his wife. But there's a massive problem with this picture. According to every official government record, the man standing in the vegetable aisle is dead. In fact, he's been dead for exactly 2 months. His death certificate is signed, his autopsy is complete, his body was found burned to ash inside the most secure prison cell in the entire country. The police have closed his file. The world has moved on. So, how is a dead man shopping for groceries? The man behind the sunglasses is Thabo Bester. He's not a businessman. He is South Africa's most notorious criminal, known as the Facebook rapist. He is a manipulator, a killer, and a psychopath who was sentenced to life in a maximum security fortress that was supposed to hold him until he died of old age. He was never supposed to see the sky again. But Thabo Bester didn't just escape. He pulled off the most audacious, expensive, and terrifying magic trick in criminal history. He didn't just dig a tunnel, he staged his own funeral, burned a stolen body to convince the world he was gone, and then drove off in a Porsche to live a life of luxury while the police were guarding an empty grave. And the craziest part? He didn't do it alone. The woman standing next to him in the grocery store isn't a hostage. She is Dr. Nandipha Magudumana. She is a celebrity doctor, a mother, and one of the country's most respected women. And she burned her entire life to the ground just to help a monster rise from the dead. This is not a movie. This is the true story of the dead man escape. And to understand how a prisoner can become a ghost, we have to start inside the concrete box where the nightmare began. The Mangaung Correctional Center is not your average jail. It is a fortress run by G4S, a massive British security company. It is designed to be inescapable. It has electronic doors, biometric scanners, and cameras covering every square inch. It is a place designed to break the human spirit. Inside this fortress, in the most secure wing, lived Thabo Bester. But Bester wasn't living like a prisoner. He was living like a CEO. This is the first meat fact that is going to blow your mind. Most inmates spend their time working out or reading. Thabo Bester spent his time running a multi-million-dollar scam empire from his cell. This sounds impossible, but it is 100% real. Bester had a laptop, he had high-speed internet, he had multiple cell phones. In 2018, 4 years before his escape, Bester launched a company called 21st Century Media. He pretended to be Tom Motsepe, a relative of the billionaire Patrice Motsepe. He hired real employees on the outside, graphic designers, marketing managers, who had no idea that their boss was serving a life sentence for murder. One specific story perfectly illustrates his genius-level manipulation. He organized a massive gala event called the Women in Media Conference. He rented a luxury ballroom in the Hilton Hotel in Sandton. He invited the biggest celebrities in South Africa. He even advertised that Hollywood stars like Halle Berry and Taraji P. Henson would be speaking. They, of course, had no idea who he was. On the night of the gala, the ballroom was packed with elites drinking champagne. They were waiting for the chairman, Tom Motsepe, to speak. Suddenly, a giant screen lit up, and there was Thabo Bester. He was wearing a tailored suit, he was sitting in front of a crisp white wall, he looked like he was in a corporate office in New York. He smiled, he charmed the audience, and he even led the crowd in singing Happy Birthday to a famous local actress. The audience applauded. They loved him. They had no idea that if Bester had turned his laptop camera just 2 inches to the left, they would have seen the steel bars of his prison cell. They had no idea that the office behind him was a white bedsheet taped to the prison wall to hide the toilet. He was mocking them. He was sitting in a cage, controlling the outside world, stealing millions from investors, and feeding his massive ego. But for Bester, being a virtual CEO wasn't enough. He wanted the real thing. He wanted to touch the money, drive the cars, and be with the women he had ensnared. He needed to escape, but he knew that if he just ran away, the police would hunt him forever. He didn't just want to be free, he wanted to be erased. He needed the world to believe that Thabo Bester no longer existed. He needed to die. And to die, you need a body. To get a body into a maximum security prison, you need an accomplice who is above suspicion. Enter Dr. Nandipha. Dr. Nandipha was the golden girl of South Africa. She was young, beautiful, and brilliant. She ran a successful aesthetic clinic in Sandton, the richest square mile in Africa. She was married, she had 2 beautiful daughters, she was on the cover of magazines. She was the kind of woman you trust with your life. Why would a woman who has everything fall for a man who has nothing but a prison sentence? Well, psychologists call it hybristophilia, sexual attraction to those who commit crimes. But Bester didn't use force. He used words. He groomed her. He convinced her that he was a victim of a corrupt system. He convinced her that they were a power couple, destined to rule the world together. By 2022, she was no longer just his visitor, she was his partner in crime. The plan they hatched was gruesome. They needed a corpse that matched Bester's height and build. They couldn't just dig one up, it would be too decomposed. They needed a fresh body. Dr. Nandipha used her medical license to visit government morgues. She claimed she was looking for a deceased relative or that she needed a body for research. In the weeks leading up to the escape, she actually claimed 2 other bodies, but they weren't right. One was too big and one was too old. She discarded them like they were broken toys. Their bodies were later found dumped in rivers. This detail is crucial because it shows you that these weren't desperate lovers making a mistake, they were cold-blooded predators shopping for a prop. Finally, they found Katlego Barang. Katlego was not a criminal. He was a 31-year-old father who loved soccer. He was a son whose mother was frantically calling his phone, wondering why he hadn't come home. He'd collapsed and died in the city, and his body was taken to a state morgue. Dr. Nandipha claimed him. She lied to the officials, saying that she was his customary wife. She took his body. She didn't take him home to a funeral. She put him in the back of her luxury car and drove him to the prison. May 3rd, 2022, the night of the fire. The timeline of this night is a masterclass in corruption. Bester didn't just sneak out, he bought the keys. He had paid off 9 different prison officials. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars in bribes. He paid the CCTV technician, he paid the supervisor, he paid the gate guards. At 7 p.m., a vehicle enters the prison. It's a delivery vehicle, but inside, hidden in a large wooden cabinet, likely a TV stand, is the cold body of Katlego Barang. The guards at the gate, who have been bribed, don't search the vehicle. They wave it through. The cabinet is unloaded and wheeled into the prison complex. At 8 p.m., Bester is moved to cell 35. This is the isolation cell. It is located in the Broadway section of the prison. Crucially, it is right next to an emergency exit, and it is in a blind spot for some of the cameras. But Bester doesn't take chances. He needs total darkness. So at roughly 9 p.m., the CCTV cameras covering the Broadway wing suddenly stop recording. The official explanation was a power failure. But the truth? The technician in the control room simply pulled the plug. For the next 6 hours, the prison is blind. Inside cell 35, the horror begins. Bester opens the cabinet, he drags Katlego's body onto the floor, he strips the clothes off the corpse, he dresses the dead man in his own prison uniform, the orange pants and the standard issue shirt. He has to make sure the body is unrecognizable. If the face is intact, the game is over. The autopsy would later reveal that Katlego's body had blunt force trauma to the head. It's believed that Bester, or one of the corrupt guards, smashed the dead man's skull against the floor or wall to simulate a struggle or a fall during the fire. Then, Bester prepares the fire. He has smuggled in accelerant, but he didn't use gasoline, which smells too strong. He used a mixture of cornmeal and paraffin. This creates a sticky, slow-burning paste that acts like napalm. He douses the mattress. He douses the body. He takes one last look at the cell that has been his home. He looks at the dead man wearing his clothes. It's 3 a.m. Bester lights the match. The fire explodes. The foam mattress acts like fuel. The cell instantly fills with thick, toxic black smoke. The temperature rises to over 600 degrees. In the chaos, Thabo Bester slips out. He's not wearing prison clothes anymore. He's wearing a G4S security uniform that was smuggled in for him. He pulls the cap low over his eyes, and he puts on a mask. He walks out of the cell block. He walks past the control room. He walks past the security gates. He doesn't run. Running looks suspicious. He walks out with the purpose of a guard finishing a long shift. He reaches the final emergency exit, and the door clicks open. Outside, the air is cool. A black SUV is waiting in the shadows. Dr. Nandipha is behind the wheel. Bester climbs into the passenger seat. He looks back at the prison walls. He can see the faint glow of the fire from the window of cell 35. He smiles. Thabo Bester is dead. Long live Thabo Bester. The next morning, the Department of Correctional Services issues a statement. Inmate Thabo Bester has committed suicide by setting his cell on fire. The public buys it. Why wouldn't they? It's a tragic story, but a believable one. Dr. Nandipha plays her role perfectly. She goes to court. She demands the body of her husband. She cries in front of the judge. She claims she wants to give him a dignified burial. She eventually claims the charred remains of Katlego Bereng and cremates them. She has literally burned the evidence. For the next 10 months, Thabo Bester and Dr. Nandipha live a life that can only be described as insane. They don't flee to South America. They don't hide in a cabin in the woods. They move to Hyde Park, Johannesburg. This is the equivalent of an escaped convict moving to Beverly Hills. They rent a mega mansion for 40,000 South African rand, or about $2,500 a month. They buy a Porsche Cayenne, they buy a Mercedes, they hire maids, gardeners, and chefs. Bester cuts his hair, puts on designer glasses. He starts calling himself TK Nkwana. And here is the most shocking part. He just goes back to work. He starts a new company called Arum Properties. He rents an office in an upscale business park. He starts scamming people again. He convinces construction companies to pay him deposits for projects that don't exist. He steals millions of rand from innocent people, all while being the most wanted dead man in the country. He attends dinner parties. He goes to nightclubs. He lives openly. His arrogance is blinding. He truly believes he has beaten the system. He believes he is smarter than the police, smarter than the government, and smarter than you. But he forgot one thing. The body in the cell told a different story. While Bester was drinking champagne in Hyde Park, a few honest people were still asking questions. A team of journalists from a small news agency called Ground Up received a tip. A warden at the prison whispered that the fire looked suspicious. The journalists, Mauricia Damons and Daniel Stein, started digging. They requested the autopsy report. The police tried to block it, but they persisted. Finally, they got it. And the report was a smoking gun. First, the soot. When you burn to death, you inhale smoke. Your windpipe should be black. The body in cell 35 had a clean, pink windpipe. This meant the man was dead before the fire started. Second, the smell. Guards reported a strong smell of petrol, but there was no petrol kept in the prison. Third, the DNA. The journalists tracked down Bester's biological mother. They compared her DNA to the body. It was a 0% match. The journalists realized the terrifying truth. The man in the cell was not Thabo Bester. Then, the final nail in the coffin. The grocery store photo. A shopper at Woolworths in Santon had seen the couple. They thought, hey, that looks like Dr. Nandipha, and that guy looks familiar. They snapped a blurry photo from a distance. When Ground Up published their investigation in March 2023, that photo went viral. Suddenly, the entire country of South Africa woke up. The face of the dead man was plastered on every screen. The police were humiliated, the prison officials were panicked. Bester and Nandipha saw the news, and they were in their mansion. They saw their faces on TV. The party was over. The escape turned into a desperate race for survival. They packed their bags, they grabbed their cash, they abandoned the Porsche, they jumped into a white SUV and floored it. They didn't just drive to the next town, they drove across the continent. They crossed the border into Zimbabwe, they drove through the night fueled by adrenaline and fear, they crossed into Zambia, they were heading for Tanzania. Their plan was to get to Kenya and from there fly to a country that doesn't have an extradition treaty with South Africa. They wanted to disappear forever. But the hunt was on. This wasn't just a local police matter anymore. Interpol issued a red notice. The FBI was watching the financial transactions. Every border guard in Africa was looking for the celebrity doctor and the dead man. Bester and Nandipha were becoming sloppy. They were tired, they were fighting, the stress of the run was destroying them. They reached Arusha, a bustling city in Tanzania. It's a tourist hub, the gateway to Mount Kilimanjaro. They thought they could blend in with the travelers. But on the night of April 8th, 2023, their luck ran out. They were driving down a dark road just 10 kilometers from the Kenyan border. If they had made it another 10 minutes, they might have vanished. But a Tanzanian police barricade was waiting. The police stopped the SUV, they shone their flashlights into the car. Bester was in the passenger seat. He looked exhausted. He had a beard. He handed them a passport with the name Tom Williams Kelly. It was an American passport. The police checked the fingerprints, and it was a match. The dead man was alive. Dr. Nandipha was sitting next to him. She wasn't wearing her designer dresses. She was wearing a hoodie, trying to hide her face. The woman who had it all, the fame, the fortune, the family, was now a fugitive in a foreign land, sitting in the dirt, handcuffed to a murderer. They were flown back to South Africa on a chartered government jet. When they landed at Lanseria Airport, the scene was like a movie premiere, but with guns. Special forces surrounded the plane. Bester stepped off the aircraft. He walked with his head up, he looked at the cameras, he wanted to be seen. Dr. Nandipha stepped off separately. She wore a mask and a hood. She looked at the ground. She knew that her life as she knew it was over. The trial that followed became a national spectacle. Bester treated the courtroom like a runway. He showed up wearing a Louis Vuitton sweater worth 15,000 rand. The next day, he wore a Burberry hoodie worth 18,000 rand. He had a fresh haircut. He complained to the judge about the food. He complained about the handcuffs. He complained that his laptop had been taken away. He showed absolutely no remorse. He didn't care about the money he stole. He didn't care about the woman he hurt. And most of all, he didn't care about Katlego Bareng. The tragedy of Katlego is the heart of this story. His family had to find out from the news that their missing son was the body in cell 35. They had to fight the government just to get his remains back. They had to bury a son who had been treated like garbage by a man who thought he was a god. As the investigation deepened, the rot in the system was exposed. It wasn't just Bester and Nandipha. The police arrested the CCTV technician, they arrested the control room operator, they arrested the gardener who had helped load the body. Even Dr. Nandipha's own father was arrested and charged with helping to transport the corpse. Bester had infected everyone around him. He used money to turn good people into criminals. He used love to turn a brilliant doctor into a monster. Today, Thabo Bester is back in prison. But this time, it is different. He's being held in the CMAX section of the Kgosi Mampuru II Correctional Center. It is the deepest, darkest hole in the South African prison system. There are no laptops here, there are no cell phones, the guards are rotated every few hours so that he cannot build relationships with them. He is in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day. Dr. Nandipha is in a cell of her own miles away. She has lost her medical license, she has lost her children, she has lost her freedom. She sits in a cold room, left with nothing but the memory of the Porsche, the mansion, and the man who promised her the world and gave her hell. If you enjoyed this Prison Break case, check out the channel. There you'll find many great stories just like this one. If you like what you see, please subscribe. I'd be very grateful, and I'll catch you next time.